So, I don't usually post personal stuff online, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest. This past month has been surreal, to say the least. I started noticing small changes in my wife's behavior, things I should have probably noticed sooner. Little things, like her being glued to her phone more than usual, disappearing into the other room to work or study, and getting oddly defensive when I asked what she was doing. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She had started this online English course called AMD Rayzen Learn English with Stories Level 2. Yeah, the one with the graded reader and all those weirdly engaging stories to help improve your English. I thought maybe she was just really into it. But something about the way she kept locking her screen when I came near, it didn't feel right. Then, one night, I was looking for a charger and accidentally knocked over her laptop. The screen lit up, and there it was, a chat window with a guy she'd been talking to for months. And it wasn't just casual, I need help with English stuff. There were inside jokes, late-night messages, and some flirty undertones that made my stomach drop. I froze. For what felt like hours, I just stared at it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to overreact and accuse her without knowing the full story, but I also felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. I remember thinking, is this really happening? Or am I imagining it? I went to bed that night, pretending everything was normal, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every little interaction over the past few weeks, wondering if I had been blind to all the signs. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made coffee, smiled, asked about her English course, all the while my mind racing. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew I knew. The way she avoided looking at me when I asked simple questions, the way her voice hit that weird defensive pitch when she laughed at her phone. It was like walking on a floor made of glass. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. After breakfast, I just blurted it out. Who is he? My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. She froze. That pause alone told me more than any explanation could. She stumbled through some half-hearted excuse about a study partner who was helping her with English stories. At first, I tried to believe her. Maybe I was overreacting. But then she admitted something else. They had been meeting in person a few times. Not for study sessions. For lunch. And she laughed nervously when she said it, like it was no big deal. I felt my chest tighten, like someone had slammed a door on it. I asked why she hadn't told me, why she felt the need to hide it. Her answer? She claimed it was harmless, and that she still loved me. The words sounded empty, even to her. I wanted to yell. I wanted to storm out. Instead, I just sat there, trying to process that the person I trusted most had been sneaking around behind my back for weeks. And all over what? Some graded English stories? After that morning, things got even weirder. I couldn't stop replaying her messages in my head, trying to figure out if I'd missed signs or if she was just a master at hiding it. I started noticing other little things, like receipts for cafes I'd never been to, bookmarks in her browser for flights to cities I didn't even know she wanted to visit, and notes on her phone that were clearly not about English lessons. I confronted her again that evening, this time with more force. I laid everything out, the chats, the receipts, the bookmarks. She tried to laugh it off, saying it was nothing serious, but I could see panic flicker across her face. For a moment, I felt sick thinking that maybe this person had been part of her life more than I realized, and that I was just pretending it wasn't happening. Then something completely unexpected happened. She burst into tears. Not the fake, dramatic kind, but real, shaking, inconsolable tears. And she admitted the full truth. She'd started talking to him months ago. It had started as help with English, but it had turned into something emotional. She didn't want to hurt me, she said, and she swore she hadn't gone further than lunch. I didn't know whether to feel relief or rage. Relief that there hadn't been anything physical yet, and rage that she'd let it get this far. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to demand that she explain why she felt the need to do this behind my back. But instead, I just sat there numb. It hit me then. This wasn't just about a fling. It was about trust, about boundaries, about realizing that the person I thought I knew might have been hiding parts of herself from me all along. The next few days were a blur. I went through this weird mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. Every time I saw her laugh at her phone or leave the room, my stomach twisted. I started checking things I never thought I'd check. Messages, emails, even her online course history. I know it sounds obsessive, but I needed to see the truth for myself. One evening, I found something that completely threw me off. Hidden in her course materials was a small notebook she'd been keeping. At first, I thought it was notes for English practice, but as I flipped through it, I realized it was something else entirely. She had been writing letters to him. Not digital messages, but full-on handwritten letters. Some of them were intimate, emotional, and terrifyingly romantic. I couldn't breathe. I read them over and over, each one stabbing at my chest like a knife. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely powerless. The person I trusted most had been emotionally cheating on me right under my nose. And for what? Some graded English stories? The absurdity of it made it sting even more. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I should do. I felt trapped between wanting to leave immediately and clinging to the life we'd built together. Every scenario I imagined ended with me heartbroken, whether I stayed or left. By the 5th day, I knew I couldn't keep sitting on this like it was some slow-burning secret. I needed answers, real, honest answers. So I asked her directly, sitting across from her at the kitchen table, my hands gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping me from shaking apart. Why him? Why this? I demanded, my voice low but shaking. She looked at me like I'd asked the impossible. And honestly, I didn't even expect a logical answer. She said it started innocently, with the English lessons, but then she said she felt understood in ways I hadn't been giving her lately. That hurt more than anything, like a punch to the gut. Then came the part that really blindsided me. She confessed she wasn't sure if she wanted to stay married anymore. She said she loved me, but there was a part of her life she felt she was missing, and she thought exploring this connection might help her figure things out. My head literally spun. I laughed. I cried. I wanted to throw my coffee mug across the room. It was absurd, surreal, and heartbreaking all at once. I didn't know whether to beg her to stay, demand she leave, or just vanish myself. Every instinct I had seemed useless in the face of this revelation. I remember thinking, this is my life? This is really happening? After that conversation, I spent the entire weekend in a daze. I didn't talk much, barely ate, and every little sound from the living room made my heart race. I kept imagining scenarios, staying and trying to rebuild trust, leaving and starting over, or just disappearing somewhere far away where I didn't have to face any of it. I even started thinking about the absurdity of the whole situation. Here we were, a married couple, and it all came down to some online English course. I laughed bitterly at the thought. AMD Rayzen Learn English with Stories Level 2 had somehow become the gateway to my emotional nightmare. It was ridiculous, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Then came the moment that really hit me. I found a folder on her laptop labeled Plans. I clicked it out of sheer panic, and inside were notes, sketches, and travel ideas with him. Not vague, maybe someday stuff, actual plans. They weren't just talking or meeting for coffee anymore. They had been planning trips together, almost like they were building a parallel life. I sank into the couch, my head in my hands. That's when I realized I couldn't just let this slide. I couldn't pretend this was something minor or harmless. It was a choice she had made, a path she was already on, and I had to decide whether I wanted to be part of it or step away before I got hurt even more. By Monday, I realized I couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. I needed to figure out my boundaries and what I was willing to tolerate. So I sat her down again. This time, no small talk, no pretending. Just me, her, and the truth laid bare on the table. I asked the questions I'd been avoiding. Do you want to be married to me, or do you want him? Can you commit to us, honestly, without secrets? Her silence hit me harder than anything else. For a long minute, she just looked at me, tears brimming, like she was trying to find the words inside her. Finally, she said something that stopped me cold. I don't know. Those 3 words felt like a punch to my chest. I wanted to scream, cry, throw things, do something to make the world right again, but I couldn't. I just sat there, letting her words sink in. She didn't know if she wanted to stay with me. At that moment, I felt a strange clarity. It wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about betrayal. Well, not entirely. It was about reality. I realized I had two choices: stay and try to rebuild a marriage with someone who wasn't sure she wanted it, or walk away before I lost myself completely. I remember thinking, I've invested years into this, but I also can't live in limbo, wondering if I'm enough. Over the next few days, I started testing the waters of what life without her might feel like. I spent evenings alone, just walking around the city, letting the air and noise fill the spaces where panic and sadness had been. I tried talking to friends, but the truth was so heavy that even casual conversation felt like a performance. Then something unexpected happened. I ran into an old colleague at a coffee shop, a friend I hadn't seen in years. We started talking, and for the first time in a long while, I laughed. Not the forced, brittle laugh I'd been giving my wife, but a real, gut-deep laugh. It reminded me that life could still have light in it, even when it felt like everything was falling apart. That night, I realized something crucial. Staying with her out of habit or fear of loneliness wasn't just unfair to me. It was unfair to both of us. I had been giving love blindly, hoping she'd eventually choose me fully, but that hope was eating me alive. So I made a small but deliberate choice. I would step back, take some space, and let her face the reality of her actions. I didn't want to make a rash decision like filing for divorce immediately, but I knew I couldn't continue pretending that everything was okay. It was terrifying, but also liberating. The moment I started pulling back, everything changed. She noticed almost immediately. At first, she tried to charm me back. Small gestures, late-night texts, even cooking my favorite meals. But it felt hollow, like lipstick on a broken mirror. I appreciated the effort, but I wasn't ready to let myself be fooled again. Then came the unexpected twist. One evening, she confronted me instead. She asked why I was distant, why I wasn't being affectionate, why I seemed like I was slipping away. And I told her the truth, calmly, but firmly. I explained that I needed space, that trust had been broken, and that I had to see if staying was something I could actually handle emotionally. Her reaction shocked me. She cried, pleaded, and, most painfully, she admitted she hadn't realized the depth of her actions until she saw me stepping back. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. It was like she finally woke up, but too late to undo what had been done. That night, I went to bed exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. For the first time, I felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself that had been lost in the haze of her deception. And I knew that the coming days would force me to make an even harder choice. By the next week, I had started seriously imagining life without her. Not in a bitter, angry way, but in a practical, almost calm way. I pictured my apartment, my routines, even weekend plans without the constant shadow of betrayal hanging over me. And the more I imagined it, the more I realized something. I might actually be okay on my own. I started doing small things for myself, taking long walks, revisiting old hobbies I'd abandoned, even signing up for a weekend photography class I'd always wanted to try. Each tiny step felt like reclaiming a piece of my life that had been buried under trust issues, anxiety, and emotional chaos. Then came the kicker. She admitted again that she wanted to explore what she had with him fully. She said it wasn't fair to herself or me to pretend otherwise. And suddenly, the choice became crystal clear. Staying would mean living in constant doubt, constantly questioning every word and gesture. Leaving would mean grief, yes, but also clarity, freedom, and eventually, healing. I remember sitting on the couch that night, staring at the wall, feeling my chest tighten and relax at the same time. I realized that I had to make a decision soon, and it wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about preserving my own dignity and sense of self. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I sat her down again, this time with a steady voice and a firm resolve I hadn't felt in weeks. I told her that I couldn't continue living in a marriage where trust had been broken so fundamentally, and that I needed to end things. Her face fell, and I could see the panic and guilt in her eyes. She tried to argue, tried to promise that she could change, that she could rebuild what we had. But I knew it wasn't about promises anymore. It was about actions, and her actions had already made the decision for me. We went through the painful logistics. Who would keep the apartment? What bills needed to be sorted? What would happen with our shared possessions? It was surreal, almost like rehearsing a play we never wanted to be in. And yet, through all of it, there was a strange sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was acting on my own behalf, not just reacting to her mistakes. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. Walking out of my own home for the first time, leaving behind a life that had been both familiar and toxic, felt like stepping into the unknown, but it also felt like reclaiming a part of myself I had lost. The first few days after moving out were brutal. I kept replaying every conversation, every hidden chat, every little lie in my head. Sleep was elusive, meals were minimal, and the silence of my friend's apartment was deafening. I thought I'd feel liberated, but mostly I just felt raw, exposed, and painfully aware of what I had lost. Then came a strange kind of unexpected clarity. Alone, I started reflecting on the marriage, on the small signs I'd ignored, on my own role in the dynamic. I realized that while her actions had caused the immediate heartbreak, I had also been avoiding honest conversations for years, brushing aside small frustrations, letting my own feelings get buried under routines. I started journaling, writing down everything. My thoughts, my anger, my sadness, even my fears about the future. Somehow, putting words on paper made it less overwhelming, like I was untangling the mess in my mind piece by piece. And then, slowly, I began to feel small sparks of hope. Not the naive, everything will be perfect kind, but the quiet, steady kind that reminded me I could survive this, that I could find stability and even happiness again. As the weeks passed, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I reconnected with old friends, started going out more, and even signed up for a weekend hiking trip just to get out of the city and clear my head. For the first time in months, I laughed freely, sometimes even genuinely, and it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. Then something completely unexpected happened. I ran into someone from the English course she had been obsessed with, the one that had indirectly caused all this chaos. It wasn't her, of course, but a fellow student from the online community who had noticed me in a study discussion months ago. We ended up grabbing coffee, talking about stories from the course, and before I knew it, I realized I was enjoying the conversation without any guilt, fear, or baggage. It hit me. Life had a way of opening doors even when the ones you were standing in front of slammed shut. That encounter was small, but it reminded me that moving forward wasn't just about leaving the past. It was about discovering what else was out there, what else I could experience, and what parts of myself I had ignored for too long. For the first time in a long while, I started to see a future where my happiness wasn't dependent on someone else's choices. By now, the emotional storm had started to settle, though the scars were still raw. I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything: the lies, the betrayals, the heartbreak, and my own responses. I realized that while her actions had caused the immediate pain, there were also lessons I needed to take forward. I learned to trust my instincts. I learned that ignoring small red flags for the sake of comfort can cost more than we think. And most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't tied to someone else's choices or actions. I also found a quiet sense of gratitude for friends who supported me, for new experiences, for the clarity that comes only after loss. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for the first time in months, I felt in control of my own story. I started writing more, journaling about my experiences, even thinking about volunteering to help others going through similar betrayals. It wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about turning pain into understanding and chaos into growth. Looking back now, I can say this whole experience changed me in ways I never expected. It hurt like hell, no sugarcoating that. But it also forced me to face truths about trust, self-respect, and what I'm willing to tolerate in a relationship. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that love without honesty isn't love at all. It's just habit, convenience, or illusion. And sometimes, walking away isn't the act of giving up. It's the act of reclaiming yourself. To anyone out there in a similar situation, pay attention to your instincts, don't ignore red flags, and never settle for half-truths or emotional betrayal. It's terrifying to step away, I won't lie, but it's also liberating, and it gives you a chance to rebuild a life that's fully yours. I'm still healing, still navigating life without her, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hope. Hope that life can be messy, painful, and chaotic, and still lead to growth, laughter, and new beginnings. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever.